so that they can be appropriately remedied and addressed by various stakeholders. It must be noted that we are not a police force nor a court of law. The evidence we've gathered points to potential violations. It is up to the Bangladeshi authorities and international justice mechanisms to investigate these potential violations further, and we encourage them to do so. In the context of the violations by Rohingya non-state actors in the group, in the camps of Cox's Bazar, Fortify Rights has collected and analysed evidence of potential violations of domestic Bangladeshi law, international human rights law, and international humanitarian law. International human rights law applies equally to state and non-state actors, but the onus is, however, on the state to take action to prevent and remedy human rights abuses. As such, Rohingyas in Bangladesh have the right to life and security against violence and bodily harm committed by anyone, including non-state actors, under international and domestic law. When these rights are violated, Rohingya in Bangladesh also have a right to effective remedy. As John mentioned, we've documented a spike in attacks against Rohingya human rights defenders in particular, and the international human rights regime has specifically articulated legal obligations states have to protect human rights defenders. Article 9 of the Declaration of Human Rights Defenders, for instance, guarantees, and I quote, prompt and impartial investigations into alleged violations and impartial investigations into and remedies for the victims of those abuses. Evidence documented in this report suggests that non-state actors active in the refugee camps of Cox's Bazar may have also committed war crimes against the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. This is not, and I repeat, not to say that there is a war occurring inside Bangladesh, but rather that some of the crimes taking place may have sufficient connection to the armed conflict happening in Myanmar, so as for them to constitute war crimes in relation to that armed conflict. War crimes occurring outside the direct theatre of war and in countries adjacent to countries in conflict is a well-established part of international jurisprudence seen in the courts for Rwanda, Yugoslavia, and Sierra Leone, and is an occurrence taken into account by the Rome Statute of the ICC, to which Bangladesh is a state party, as well as the Geneva Conventions and their optional protocols. These legal texts and this international jurisprudence connected to them makes clear that for an act to be considered a war crime, what's important is that the act in question contravenes the laws of war, and that there's a specific connection or legal nexus between the act and the armed conflict. While we cannot establish this nexus for all the violations we've documented in this report, we can for some of them. What does this mean for Bangladesh? Well, international humanitarian law obliges Bangladesh to investigate war crimes and to bring justice to all perpetrators, regardless of their status or nationality. The crimes documented in this report also merit the attention of the International Criminal Court, which has already established jurisdiction and is investigating atrocities occurring against the Rohingya, including by ASA and other groups. We have many recommendations that I encourage you to read in the report to various stakeholders, but I'd like to finish by highlighting just a few of them. Firstly, the Bangladeshi authorities must thoroughly investigate the allegations of killings, torture, abduction, and other crimes in this report, and hold those responsible to account. Secondly, where there is evidence of a sufficient nexus between the crimes occurring in Cox's Bazar by non-state actors in the camps and the conflict in Myanmar, these crimes should be considered war crimes and dealt with accordingly by Bangladeshi and international justice mechanisms. Finally, the government must cooperate with the UN and others to improve protection responses and provide sustainable solutions to Rohingya human rights defenders in particular, who face specific risks and threats from non-state actors. Thanks very much.
I think the question was on the one Bangladeshi authority that was killed by ARSA a few years ago. He was, I believe, a DGFI officer. Is that correct? They arrested members of the group at that time of ARSA. You're saying soon after that you saw the emergence of RSO. RSO has existed for many, many years. It's one of the oldest Rohingya resistance organizations. it became inactive after the kind of like 2000s at some point became inactive. Noor Islam, Dr. Yunus, the two founders of RSO, went to the global diaspora, started doing more political activity, less armed activity. Right after the Myanmar military coup happened in 2021, we saw RSO reemerge in the camps. Their command structure is better placed than ARSA, the command and control, and we saw that they were conducting much less abuses. That's changing a little bit now, because I think some members of ARSA are joining RSO. We do not have evidence in the report about the Bangladeshi authorities giving support to RSO, except for the one incident that we talk about during the attack in No Man's Land. So I know that doesn't answer your question fully, but thank you very much.